good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and a huge welcome to Produce, Mix, Fix, and Conquer. So my name is Rich Steve Beck. I'm the founder of our community and also a mastering engineer. So I've got a fantastic guest coming up very shortly. So if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to head over to our Facebook community to join us, which is facebook.com/groups/produce mix fix and conquer. Or if you're on Facebook, feel free to join our YouTube community, which is youtube.com/produce mix fix and conquer. So our guest coming up very shortly is Kevin, who's an amazing audio engineer, mixer, guitarist, and producer. He's been in the bands Dillinger Escape Plan and Knife Glitter. He also owns an epic New Jersey studio, Backroom Studio, which is absolutely awesome, full of many goodies, amazing guitar amps and guitars. And without further ado, just like to introduce Kevin. How you doing?
Hey, how are you?
I'm really good, man. How's things over there at the moment?
Good. Busy. Just got a band came in next door rehearsal, so you may hear some noise coming from there. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad. That's not up to me.
Oh, incredible, man. But thank you so much for joining us today. So I know it's been a bit of an all-day for you today as well. I know you've got another session later on today as well. So really appreciate your time and for joining us. So,
no worries, man. Just it's kind of the how it goes. Usually we mix 3 songs today, 2 from one artist, 1 from another artist, and then we have a rap session coming in afterwards. So got quite the day planned.
Fantastic. Awesome, man. That's brilliant. Right. Okay. So I just want to say as well, thank you to everyone that's watching the live. So I'm over here in Manchester and Kevin's over in New Jersey. So we've made this live stream work today. So yeah, Kevin, what I'd love to do is maybe start the conversation off like we've done with our guests over the last few months that we've been really blessed and honored to have a chat with, like pros like yourself.
Sure.
So awesome. Thanks, man. So what music did your parents get you into when you were growing up as a kid?
Honestly, my parents aren't like super big music buffs. So, they would play like some like Bee Gees or like something from their era, on the radio or whatever on the stereo. But they're never not like, if I told my dad, if I asked him who Queen was, he would have no idea. Like that's the kind of person he is. Yeah. So they're not like super music heavy people, but that's the direction I kind of took. So actually consider I got into music kind of late because I didn't have that push. I had an older brother, but he was like too old, like too far of a gap for like to be like, listening to what he was doing because he was away when I was growing up and stuff. So I got into like heavier stuff when I was probably like 13, 14 and just kind of gravitated towards that and started playing in bands. And then the guys in the bands would show me stuff that they're into. And then I usually would just kind of like with heavy music, usually don't just like start with the heaviest, it's always like a gradual type thing. I feel like, because your ear takes a little bit to get developed to be able to take a lot of that punishment. And like, a lot of times I feel like if you showed someone like who's never heard a song before in their life, like music at all, and you played them like something brutal and heavy, they would just hate it and not understand. Like it's hard to extrapolate a vibe from that.
Absolutely.
So like usually you start with something in the genre and then you get further and further and further and you keep pushing the boundary of your ear and stuff. Because the first time I actually heard Dillinger Escape Plan, I thought it was terrible.
Really?
It was to me at the time. It was too far for my ear at the time. So I actually gave the CD away to somebody else because I was like, I'm never gonna listen to this. So.
Oh, amazing. That's incredible. It's really interesting that you say that. So I remember the first time that my friend played me some mathcore stuff. And I, again, like similar to yourself, I was just listening to it and I was there thinking, what the hell is this? It's like, where's the 4/4 in all this?
Yeah.
How do I follow this? And I think maybe at the time I was listening to bands like Nirvana and Green Day and all that sort of stuff. But you're right. It's like kind of you adapt, don't you? It's like as time progresses and then it becomes really, really good fun. So what was the first record or CD or tape that you bought as a kid? Can you remember what was with your own money?
So first thing I spent my own money on probably was like either Stone Temple Pilots Core or maybe like Rage Against the Machine Evil Empire or something like that. I think that was probably, like, and those were things that I had either seen on like MTV and got into, or like a friend was playing and I was like, what's that? And then they showed me. So like I was pretty much relying on everybody around me when I first got into music, because I got into it late. Like I said, I didn't have my dad wasn't like jamming like Metallica or anything cool in the car. So I didn't even get into that stuff till way later.
Yeah. Amazing. Thanks so much for that, Kevin. So tell us as well, what age were you when you first started playing guitar? And was it classical guitar? Was it electric guitar that you started off on?
Yeah, no, I started with electric because I didn't really have a ton of interest in it to begin with, but I went over to one of my friend's house from middle school, I think it was. And he just played like a Rage Against the Machine riff through like his like Fender Strat with distortion. And I was just like, this is the coolest sound ever. Like, I don't know what's going on. Just like seeing it in person was such a big difference than hearing stuff on the, like, stereo to me at the time. So I was hooked. After that, I tried to like figure out how to play, and I was terrible for a very long time. But yeah, I started with electric, and then I didn't get into classical only until it was a necessity at the time, because the program that I applied for in college required that you take either the classical guitar track or classical track, and I could only play guitar, so that was that option, or the jazz track, which was electric guitar. But it's a William Patterson University, and it's one of the top universities for jazz in the country. So like, there's no chance in hell that I was getting in that program without a ton of work that I didn't have time to do. Yeah. So I just went with the classical track, which is what the majority of people did. Like, they didn't let many at the time. They weren't letting a lot of people into the jazz program anyway. So yeah, I picked that up out of necessity, and it had a very slow uphill battle with that, trying to get, because it's like a totally different thing. Like, you are playing the left hand, like on the fretboard, but you're doing it like bass notes and treble notes at the same time. So like, and you're doing it with your fingers. So there's a lot of like different motions and stuff like that. It's ergonomically, it's very different than playing like bar chords or like power chords on guitar, the pick. Yeah. So yeah.
But has that influenced the way that you play guitar now as well, like learning all the classical stuff?
I mean, I'm sure to a degree. I would say like just like theory in general, picking that up in college probably had a big impact. Understanding harmony and how that works, that's probably a big influence. I mean, I really appreciate the classical compositions those people made back then, and still are making, but for me, it was just kind of like a thing I had to do. It wasn't something that I was like, I've always wanted to play the Bach Beret in D minor. It was just like I had to do it, so I got through it. And you have to grow on your right hand. You have to grow out your nails so you can like use them as picks essentially. And it's not something I was super into, And I would do that during the week, and then on the weekends, my bands would have shows and stuff like that. And I, at the time, was like doing a lot of like electric guitar, like tapping stuff. So I would always be breaking my right hand fingernails that were supposed to be long for guitar, because I would smack them really hard on the fretboard trying to pick, and it was just a mess. And they would always break. So I would have we'd have the juries at the end of each semester. So you'd sit in front of a panel of other teachers and classical guitar teachers and stuff like that, and you would play a piece, and they would have it in front of them to sight read it while you sight read it as well, and perform it in front of them. This super awkward type panel judgment thing. And I remember every time, immediately after those were finished, every semester, I would just cut my fingernails off and just be done with it until the next semester started.
Oh, amazing. Thanks so much for that, man.
Sure.
Yeah, so tell us, obviously, that a big part of the course was audio engineering as well. So how did you get into audio engineering? What gave you the bug to get into it? Did you record bands that you were in at the time? Is that how you started? Or?
Yeah, I mean, like most people probably, that's how I started. Things are a lot different now than they were, 20 years ago when I was getting into stuff. But yeah, I had a band, Knife the Glitter. It was like a heavy progressive metal type band, tech metal, whatever. And, I traded, I think it was a JCM 800 2203 50 watt for a Boss BR8 like digital recorder DAW thing that you use zip disks to record onto. Like these are really old zip disks that probably nobody knows what they are anymore. But that's what it was, and I didn't have any idea what I was doing. Like there was presets that I would scroll through, and then when it sounded better, I would stop there. I would just be like, okay, I don't know what compression is, but it sounds better when it's on. So I'm just going to leave that setting on. And that's how I would, you had 8 tracks, and then that's how I mixed my bands. And like, I still have the recordings because I'm a crazy person, and they sound, like probably almost unlistenable, I would imagine. But at the time, people liked them, and then more people came to me for me to record in like garages and stuff like that. And I didn't really make any money, but like they would give me like pizza or like, whatever. They like, you give it like $100 or something, like nothing like that's going to pay any bills. But, you're doing a decent job. I mean, right now, probably anybody just picking up like a Focusrite system and a DAW probably has a way easier time with the computer instead of just trying to work on like an 8-track device that's so outdated.
Yeah.
But you got to cut your teeth on something, and that's what I had in front of me. I didn't, computers weren't doing that kind of stuff then. So, I mean, unless you had like a dedicated like mix system, which was like, tens of thousands of dollars. So yeah, I did a bunch of records like that. Word got around. I got the hang of things where, some of the technical stuff, and then more probably about interfacing with people and being a people person. I always tell my interns and people that work here that like that is just as much, if not more important than being good at technical stuff. Like if you can't interface with your artist or, whoever you're working with, you're not getting anywhere. So you got to really know how to hit schedules, be comfortable in a room with people, all kinds of stuff. But so just like learning that part of it too. And then I remember I was recording with another engineer, an older guy back in Jersey, and the band would record, and then I would always come after for the mix sessions, like over and over, like probably like over mixing it. And the guy was just like really impressed with my ear in terms of hearing things that he would let go or didn't hear or whatever. And he was like, man, you should just like do this for a living. He probably said it out of frustration, but I took it earnestly, and I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. So like, I didn't like at that point make a decision or anything, but I kept that in the back pocket. And then, when it came, I had to go to school. Well, I didn't have to, but I did go to school, and I had to pick something. So actually they had the recording department at the college, and that was like kind of music. And so I could, still be involved in music to a degree. I wasn't doing like something super boring. And so like I took that route, which at William Patterson is a really intensive route. It's like not like it's not like one of those, over in the States, we have these other ones like Full Sail and stuff like that are like kind of like get fast kind of classes, like fast track things. They're not like super in depth. I mean, they're in depth enough from what I understand, but they're just like, buy your way in kind of. And I just hear a lot of people's experiences pretty terrible at those places. But so I didn't have any actual inkling to do this professionally at the time. Like I just wanted to play in my band like that. If you asked me back then, I didn't care about recording. I just wanted to play music. But this was kind of like something I had to do in the meantime. And so weird because in my class of like what was like 15 people, I think I'm the only one that's actually doing it professionally, and everybody else is doing something completely different. Like one guy I know, like a cop, one guy is like works for like Home Depot. Like everyone does something completely irrelevant to what we all went to class for. But that's how it works sometimes. Yeah.
That's crazy. And now you're a college professor as well, to be fair. So
yeah, actually over at that same college, I kept in touch with my professor, who's now my boss, and over there. And he's super cool, super knowledgeable guy. I learned so much from him, not just about like audio, but like just like life stuff. He's really good at like being like a kind of like a parental figure, especially when you're in college. Someone says like, I don't understand how life works. Like, can you help me with this question? So super cool guy. And he would always ask, because I was one of the people that actually turned into, like I had my own business. I was an entrepreneur, and he would always have me come in every couple of years or every year to talk to the students. and just, share my experience with like starting a studio, starting a business. How does that work? Because at the time when I was in school, I had no idea what I was getting into with starting my own business, a 7,000 square foot building. It's just like, there's a lot to deal with. And so he would have me back. And then eventually he just asked me to start a class, like a course, an advanced mixing class. And that's what I teach to the upperclassmen. And then I teach an intro class to the younger kids too. It's just like getting in. So I have like the complete end of each. I have like the young kids that don't know anything, which I was there. I remember that. And then I have the experienced guys who teach me stuff a lot of times too, because they're up in all the new tech and all the new stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So, yeah.
But it keeps it more varied though, right? It's more fun that way to like, have both ends of the spectrum that you teach.
Yeah, well. I mean, it can be interesting for sure, because like it's the weirdest thing for me is like seeing myself on the other side of that desk now.
Yeah.
And like I see the kids, and sometimes they say the craziest shit, and I'm just like, man, I did that same thing. and they do the weirdest things. Sometimes like, oh, I did the same thing. Like why would you fall asleep in a class that you're paying for? I'm like, oh, but I did that too. So, yeah, it's been fun. I really enjoy like working honestly with the upperclassmen a little more, just because I can relate to them and they're more on the level. The other kids, I'm just like trying to get them into audio, so that's a little bit more of an uphill battle on that one, but it's still fun.
That's awesome, man. Thanks so much for that, Kevin. Tell us as well, so when you were recording then and started mixing, can you remember the first DAW that you started out on?
I mean, the first one I ever touched was like Cakewalk or Fruity Loops, like one of those two.
Wow.
But those are just like super, old, like Fruity Loops 4 and Cakewalk like 1 or something. I don't even know. Yeah. But actually the first one I actually dug into would be Pro Tools, because that's what they taught at the university. And that's what I use right now. Like I can't share my screen, but I actually have a session open that I was just mixing before.
Awesome.
Yeah, Pro Tools for me is it's the strongest one for what I do in terms of production. And you can, every DAW has its strengths, and you can get good results with them as long as you know what you're doing. It's really not so much about the DAW, more about just like how well you're versed in it and how quick you are to turn around a project.
Absolutely. And I know when I've talked to a lot of pros like yourself as well, at the end of the day, Pro Tools is industry standard. And I know that if you go into other studios, to know your shit, you need to know Pro Tools as well, really, to be fair. So, but yeah, when I do mastering myself, it's like I love Wavelab and I love Nuendo and all the Steinberg stuff.
Wow, Nuendo.
As well.
I haven't heard that one for a while.
Yeah, it's great. Nuendo 11 has just come out actually, fairly recently. So I was in contact with the guys at Steinberg just to kind of find out a bit more about it, and took the plunge. But the reason why is because you probably heard a bit about Dolby Atmos and what's going off with that at the minute. So it's actually got Dolby Atmos integrated in part of Nuendo itself. So my train of thought was as well that if I have any, kind of like podcasters or kind of like any video clips, then I can also do stuff in Nuendo as well at the same time, and do like, kind of, some masters, or kind of do like quasi mixes, stuff like that. So it's an awesome DAW though, man. It's super great, but again, like everyone else, still use Pro Tools as well. It's like you said, it's industry standard, so it's just an absolute go-to.
I don't know that it's honestly as industry standard. I mean, it is because it's very popular, but sure. I mean, in interfacing with other people's projects now, especially since everyone has like a home thing, most everybody that send demos on and stuff, most people just send me WAV files. Like it's not super common that I open up an actual Pro Tools session from another studio. Great. So it's mostly people just use whatever they have, export the WAV files. Hopefully they've done it properly, and then I import them to my DAW. So yeah, like the argument that it's industry standard, I don't really think holds as much weight anymore.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and Avid's big thing was their hardware, and they don't really do a ton of hardware anymore, and the DSP end of stuff is kind of like a moot point because of CPUs now. So I don't think it's a good argument anymore. I think it's just an argument that people just have been repeating for a long time.
For years. Yeah, I
Yeah.
suppose for kids as well, like, like you said, if you've got kids, like you said, that you teach like right at the beginning of, kind of learning, stuff like Reaper, for example, or Logic, how cheap both of those DAWs are in
Yeah.
comparison. If kids are in Ableton, if kids are in there, like learning their shit and it works for them, then that's awesome. That's amazing, man. What about speakers as well? So what speakers did you start out on? Can you remember what you started mixing on back in the day?
Started on is not good. Starting on, I was using headphones like AKG 214s or whatever they were. I think they were 214s. But that's why I didn't have monitors. Like when I first built this place and like got in here, I didn't have anything. I didn't have a big bank account that I went and bought a bunch of stuff with. I started with literally, I grabbed my gaming computer from my house, which had all stupid blue like LEDs in it at the time, and like it looked ridiculous. And I like borrowed some stuff from people. Like one of my friends worked at Guitar Center, and he had like an extra mic he let me borrow for a while. My other friend of mine had like a 002, which was an old DigiDesign interface with 4 mic pre's on it. So you're super limited because you can only do 4 tracks at once, but it had line ins in the back. So, I got creative, and I had a TRS Snake that I would run a really, really crappy crate PA mixer. And I would use the pre's on that and then line out into the line ins on the 002 if I needed to do drums.
Yeah.
And, I didn't even have a desk. I had, there in the rehearsal rooms, there were like these stools that it came with the studio when I bought it. And I was like, okay, I'll grab these 2 stools and I'll grab a piece of plywood from the dock in the back. And that was my desk. I put everything on there. It was, and I didn't have monitors, so everyone just wore cans. Yeah. And that's where I did my first bunch of records. And then, I did a decent enough job where people would pay me and then keep coming back. So then I would be able to be like, okay, now I can afford a desk. So let's buy a desk. And now I can afford monitors. Let's get some monitors, and it's just been that kind of like, that's how I, eventually, got all the stuff that I have. And, so and it's not maybe the best way to start a business, but it's definitely, you have an appreciation for everything at that point because you really know every piece of gear, and you're not just walking into stuff. You really, every time you get something, you're picking it out. So you're vetting it with reviews and all kinds of stuff. And,
100%.
Totally.
It's really interesting that you're saying that because I interviewed a guy about a week ago, a guy called Addy, but what he does is he travels around Morocco and in a van, and he records artists, but all the artists, they're all obviously wearing headphones. He's wearing headphones as well at the same time, barely ever uses speakers. So you just use what you've got, right? It's like,
whatever works. Whatever works for your situation. I eventually got myself into some Atoms for a while because they were super hyped, like marketing wise, and there's new ribbon tweeters and stuff like that. And I fell into that trap kind of, and I used them for a long time. And I honestly made the switch at some point when I had them in here for a very long time. And then my another friend of mine, Steve Ebbets, who's like a really well-known, he's an amazing producer. He did all the Dillinger records, and he did the last record, part of it here. So he like brought in some Genelecs, a 1030As, the smaller ones. And to me, when you put them on, I was so used to the clean the clean Atoms that when I like turned on, like I had it routed into my system, I was like, oh, these sound so aggressive in like the 3.5K area. It was just too much for me, but like that's a super crucial area for guitars and like a lot of other stuff. And if you're just scooping it out because it sounds nasty, it sounds cleaner with the Atoms. Because I don't know if it's the crossover point or just how the ribbons work. But after I like forced myself to use them because he was using them and like swore by them, I realized I sold the Atoms, I got rid of them. I swore them off because I can't deal with those things anymore. And now I have the 1030s, 1031s, and I have the NS10s just to have the NS10s. I throw them on every once in a while, but like there's such a stark contrast between the Genelecs and the NS10 that it's just like it's really different. That 1K area is so pronounced in the NS10s that like it's definitely cool to check things on, but like
Yeah.
nothing we would listen to sounds like that. So I don't. While it was a really important reference back in the day, I don't see how it's super relevant today. It's just it's so aggressive in the 1K area that like nothing sounds like that nowadays.
No, it's really interesting. I know that a lot of engineers use the mix cubes as well, like the
Mm-hmm.
mono mix cubes. So, and I
Yep.
know that, you know, like any studio, like you see studio pictures or you walk into any studio like yours, you know, you've got the NS10s and it's almost like a studio staple almost,
Yeah.
you know, kind of having
It's
them in
kind
there.
of unfortunate, honestly. It's just like that, you know, I think it was in an ad with I can't remember who it was. There was somebody. They were in a studio and they had him in the background, and they were like on fire at that point. They did something really good, and it just kind of like caught on through that. Like, oh, they're using that, and then like it got huge, and then everybody started getting them. And like not to take anything away from them, they're cool sounding for certain things, but like I don't know. I'd rather see 1030s, like older 1030s, in every studio than those. For me.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and this is really interesting as well because I know with like a lot of engineers that I talk to, and what we've come to realize, especially on the community as well, that it's all about. I'm sure you get this with your students, but it's all about perception. And every engineer has got a different pair of ears, and they hear music differently with rooms and acoustics. And the monitors that they use as well. So with your converters, what converter do you currently use at the minute with your?
Yeah, I have
mixers?
3 of the Avid HDIOs loaded up with cards, so that's what we use.
Fantastic, awesome. Maybe we'll have a chat about some outboard stuff in a minute. But before we do, tell us the journey about starting with Dillinger Escape Plan then. So I understand that you obviously started touring with those guys. So when did the call happen? Were they friends beforehand? Were you already working with them on projects? Is that how it all came about?
Yeah, so I'll try to do the faster version of the story if I can.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I was a big fan for a while, and then I like ran into one of them at like the local mall around my house, and like I was surprised. I wasn't even sure if it was them or him, and I went and asked him if he was in the band. He said he was, because I'd just seen them like a couple weeks before, like live.
Yeah.
And I was asking him, like, do you guys give guitar lessons? Like, I just figured I'd just go right for it, you know? And then he's like, I don't really, but the other guy in the band probably does. If you want his card, he gave me like. Back then, people had cards, so he gave me his card, like the band card. Nice. And I called him up, and sure enough, he said, "Yeah, you know, I could teach you." So we ended up when he was like home from touring or whatever. I'd go over there, we'd meet up, and I'd go to his parents' house, and he'd teach me, you know, what he could. I mean, Ben isn't like the most like theory savvy guy. He's more of a feel player, I would say. Incredible field player. And but he has like, he can understand like the theory language, and he showed me what he knew in his vocabulary. Yeah. And most of it was honestly just talking about like the industry, because that fascinated me like far more. Like the actual like being in a room with someone who was actually in it, like and hearing their stories and stuff is so entertaining and just like eye-opening, and I honestly cared more about that than like learning how to play. And I was horrible back then. Like he asked me to just like do like basic finger exercises, and I was so nervous to play in front of him I couldn't even get through them. It was embarrassing.
Wow.
But eventually I got better.
Yeah. Right.
So but that was when I was like a freshman or sophomore in college maybe. And we didn't really stay in contact as much as I'd like, because he was always going on tour and stuff. So the lessons were kind of scattered. But eventually, when I graduated school, I took over this place. And funny enough, they were the first band to ever get a room here, because it's a big spot, and like bands have lockout rooms. They pay like for a year lease or whatever. Yeah. And they were one of the bands that we inherited, and they were here for years. So I ended up reconnecting with him, and my band was also rehearsing here. So we were a similar kind of sound style kind of thing. So he thought it was good, and he offered to take us on tour as an opener, and that was super rad. I mean, that was for a local band. That was literally the biggest achievement we could have asked for, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and it wasn't like, all right, so figure out your situation. It was like, you can stay on our tour bus because we have extra bunks, and then you can, we'll pay you. And like all these, like, it was like an easy tour. Like we didn't have to do anything except for show up, play our songs. And like the other side of it was we had to like help with like teching. Like I was their tech for that tour.
Yeah.
And our bass player was like the merch guy for them or whatever. So like we had to like pitch in, but that was like way worth, you know, that as opposed to having our own ride and like van and all kinds of bullshit. So it was perfect. And it was really great. It was the best thing that band had ever done because we got put in front of an audience that was like super eager to hear that kind of music. You know, when you play local shows and you're kind of a really weird out there tech metal band, especially back then, like the 2000s, it's super hit or miss because that kind of music wasn't on everyone's radar. So, you know, everyone was doing breakdown music like they have been for a long time. And then we would come in with this really crazy stuff. And then, you know, it's super hit or miss with the audience. But like when you get put in front of a Dillinger audience, it's like a win. It's like, it's, you know, it's great.
Amazing.
So yeah, then I ended up staying with them as a tech after that tour and going into Europe and doing some stuff with them, getting that under my belt. And I had worked with other people too at the time. I think I had worked for this guy, Todd Rundgren, who's like a big deal. I don't know. A lot of younger people don't know who he is, but like back in the day in the 70s, he was massive. Yeah. So I worked with his live band, a handful of other things, just playing million shows growing up. So, yeah, I eventually I worked for Dillinger as a tech for a little bit, and then just kept the relationship going with Ben mainly, and the other guys too. But like he was actually pretty local to me, so we would hang out and watch movies together. Like on Sundays, we'd watch Game of Thrones together, get our families together and stuff. And eventually, there was a conversation about the other guitar player leaving, and I asked if I could just like jokingly if I could take his spot, like.
Yeah.
Literally not serious at all because I didn't think I could do it. But then he just was like, sure, go ahead if you think you can handle it. And I took that kind of like as a challenge. And I was like, man, I should maybe do this. You know, like there's a crazy opportunity that I, like, you know, joining a band that you idolize for so long doesn't come very often. So I made the decision to try. And they didn't make it easy. They didn't be like, okay, here's the charts for the song, and it's in, you know, this one's this, and there's like I got just figure it out. It's just, that's what it was. And if you're familiar with that band at all, it's not easy to figure out. No. Yeah, I would say my bigger strength is not my playing; it's more my understanding of how like chord voicings are, and like just hearing that, being able to be good at deciphering that kind of stuff. So I tried out with a handful of songs and we worked on them together, and eventually I got in. Like there was talk of other people that I knew that were trying out that were miles better than me, but they didn't have the in, and they didn't they weren't as good at understanding, deciphering the riffs. I don't know, but they didn't get it and I did, and I was so shocked. So that was kind of how that went down. Yeah, it was tough. It was a lot of doing 8-hour, 10-hour sessions at the studio here, and then at nighttime going home and just going immediately into digging into those songs. So it was a long tryout for sure.
But however, it's like doing music. I know we've had a chat about this before we went live as well, but doing music for a living as well, though, been able to like, you know, tour with one of your favorite bands that you're a fan of, and then actually getting to play with them for a tour, and then also, well, how long you were with those guys for, but then also as well, been able to like, you know, do the studio thing full time as well, but just been soaked with music. I mean, how awesome is that? You know, just to enjoy, you know, kind of doing that music as a rather than a hobby, actually doing it for a living. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough too. Like with, it's hard to. It's always, you know, grass is always greener. So there's definitely moments when I'm burnt out on it. You know, like
of course.
You do it for so long. Like I just got back from a short vacation just because like I was so fried. So like if I open up the hard drive right now, we're working with, I counted it the other day, like almost 30 different bands at once. So there's so many projects to tackle and mix and remix and do notes for and do editing. It's so much. And, you know, like I'm luckily I'm not a one-man show. I have a nice team behind me to help me with stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, it falls on me to make sure things go out. And, it's great because I am working with music and I can kind of, as a producer, I'm in every band I work with. So that feeling of needing to be in a band isn't there so much because I kind of get that, you know, fulfilled by working with all these other bands and having my say in parts and, you know, like adding my own flavor with that. So, it's cool, but it can also, like anything else, like if someone who loves cars you know, maybe they become a mechanic because they love working with cars, but, you know, after 8 hours or whatever, working on your cars all day, you don't go home and work on your performance car or whatever. You're just shot, you know. So that there are some negatives to it, but it's mostly great. You know, I'm my own boss, and I get to work with a really my groups are awesome. Everyone that comes in here has a good time, and they're mostly return customers and stuff. So yeah,
absolutely amazing, man. How long has Backroom Studios been going for then? So how many years has it been so far?
Yeah, I've been here 15 years now, doing this. So it's been a while at this point. Like it's hard to think about that 15 years. That's like almost half my life. It's so weird to say that. So yeah, so I've been doing it for a while. I don't know how. I wish I could go through. I have all my hard drives of all the backup data, but like I must have worked on thousands of songs at this point. Like if I had to actually count, it'd be pretty wild to understand that number.
Insane, absolutely insane, man. So yeah, maybe let's explore some of the gear that you've got in your studio currently as well. So
sure.
I know that you posted a YouTube video, I can't remember how long ago it was, on your channel about plugins as well. So you don't really show how many plugins that you've got to a client because it's just absolutely ridiculous, right? But it's like, but I know obviously you've got some cool, crazy outboard gear as well that you enjoy using. I know that when I've had a look at some of your studio pictures, you're using quite a lot of 500 series stuff. So what are some of your favorite pieces that you enjoy using at the moment?
Man, I think my favorite thing that I use on everything is the API 2500 stereo comp. Nice. That's my drum bus, like my parallel comp that I've used since I've gotten it. Yeah. I used to use the plug-in version of it for like 10 years, and then I was like, man, let's just buy one. And hopefully everyone says it's better, you know, and it is. The actual unit is definitely better than the Waves emulation. I mean, the Waves emulation does a great job, though. So that's my favorite thing. Every time I have my drum mix going and then I slap that on, it just does it. I'm like, okay, that's where it needed to go. Thank you very much. I actually like it so much, and it's such a part of my drum sound that I track with it on as a parallel bus because it's my go-to in the end. So like it's also I just put it on the beginning so that I can shape it around that whole sound. So so that's a big part of that, which is where something like Pro Tools is stronger than other DAWs because you have like delay compensated inserts and stuff like that. So you can track while running into, you know, a side, you know, like a parallel compressor like that, you know, a hardware unit. What else do we have here? I like this. I've been using this Wes Audio. I think it's called the Dione. Yeah. That thing's great too. Again, it's a thing that I use like an SSL style comp on my mix bus, and now I just use this, and it's a weird kind of like routing, but I send everything through an analog summer, Dangerous. Yep. So the stereo out of the Dangerous goes directly, and it's tapped right into the stereo comp, and then that stereo comp gets fed back into Pro Tools on an audio track that I record everything to. Yeah. So I really like that, and it's totally recallable and controllable with a plugin. So it's like the benefits of the actual analog piece and the plug-in control, which is like a great thing for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Kevin. So I've had a good chat with various engineers. What was really interesting that they mentioned, I don't know how you work in your when you're mixing or if you do any mastering as well, but
Hmm.
they've said to me, it's like kind of you talk to some engineers, and I've talked to them over the past few months that they've got like reams and reams and reams of like rack mount stuff behind them, but they tend to usually mainly use it for recording in. That's kind of
Hmm.
their main thing. But whereas when it comes to mixing and mastering, it tends to be pretty much in the box. So is that your process, or are you more hybrid when you approach mixing and mastering? How do you tend to work it?
My process is more like I have a ton of outboard gear as well,
Yeah,
that I really hit on the way in mostly, and then I try to get everything that I do as best sounding as possible on the way in. So I
yeah,
will compress everything on the way in that I'm going to do. I will EQ everything on the way in. I'll do like the editing in the box when I'm tracking it and stuff like that. So when I like sit down to do my mix, it's done
yeah,
essentially. Like my mixing doesn't take very long because it already sounds really good as I'm tracking with the band. When I was younger and didn't have the tools or the knowledge, you know, when you say, okay, I tracked the song and then you go to mix it, you're like, man, and you listen to like another
yeah.
reference for something that's you're like, this isn't even close. Like
Absolutely.
it's so dark, there's so much bass, the high end is terrible. You know, it's so far off that when you actually have to mix, you don't even know where to start because it's so daunting.
Yeah,
But you know, I wish someone would have told me that a long time ago. But yeah, so like I try to do everything on the way in as best as I can. Crank high end where I need to crank high end because obviously modern mixes are very bright. So, you know, everything goes through the treatment on its way in. And then, like I said, when I sit down to actually get my mix going, it's like it's mostly just balancing at that and adding
yeah.
automation. So there's, you know, like I throw a limiter on the end and do the thing, and it's you know, it's pretty easy. So.
Absolutely amazing, man. What mic? Thanks so much for that. What about microphones as well? So talk about recording in. What mics do you enjoy using? Maybe on drums to start off with.
Sure. You know, stuff is always changing. You know, I try to keep things fresh, but I do obviously have some things for like if I'm doing like a rock or metal type thing that I'll always go to.
Yeah,
Um, so I like a lot of the Rode stuff actually. I've made a connection with Rode, and they have not everything, but they have a lot. Like what they do have is really good. In like their new like Black series, I don't know what you would call it, but like they have
yeah,
the TF5s, which are like the little overheads, or not, they're little small diaphragm condensers that I use them as overheads. Um, and I, you know, I had Neumanns, I have all kinds of stuff, and I really like the way those TF5 sound.
yeah,
Um, and they also have these NTRs, which is their ribbon, which is really nice, and it's phantom powered, so that saves the trouble of
yeah,
being blown up with my 121. My 121, I finally just got back
yeah.
my Royer because it's always broken. It's just always broken. It's like I've sent it in like so many times, and I'm just kind of tired of like being delicate with it. So
Mm,
that's where I really like the ruggedness of the NTR on the Rode, um, and it's a little bit brighter. I think the 121 just is a little dark, so you really have to crank some high end on that when using it with a guitar or whatever.
yeah,
And just because of its nature, you can't use it on everything. So it's cool, but it's kind of like a specialized mic. It's not something I reach for all the time.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I use i5s on the top and bottom snare. I used to try to be fancy and I'd sneak in like a condenser next to it. But then I just like, I got, you know, when you're younger and you're trying to figure out what sounds good and you're not really sure and you just take other people's word for it, you try other things. You try all these things and you figure out what works for you and what doesn't work. So
yeah,
I found that I don't need to use the small diaphragm condenser next to it. I'd rather not deal with the phase issues and then just have the top mic single and the bottom mic single, and just work the phase with the overheads in the room and make sure all that's all good. And yeah, I don't ever reach for anything honestly besides the i5, and I love the way my snares sound. The last ton of years I've been doing this, I just really big fan of that. And that's a cheap mic that you can just grab anywhere, you know. So,
amazing, absolutely
and
fantastic.
421s on toms. Like I
Yeah,
can't not have those at this point. I mean, I'm sure there's a replacement I could get, but like I just have so many of those, and they are annoying in their own way because of how massive they are in positioning. It's so irritating, but like they kind of make up for it in how good they are.
Amazing, man. So I was in thanks so much for that. I was with a client of mine in the studio in Manchester, and it was really interesting that when I literally sat in on the whole session over like 4 days just to kind of see what was going off in the process. But they used a trash mic on the kit as well, and the trash mic, man, it just made all the difference. It was almost like some weird voodoo thing going on, but it was just like it really did make, you know, kind of a lot of difference as well. It was so cool as well, just kind of sussing out what was going on in the mix. And but we were very lucky as well with vocals. It's an AKG, I think it was, but it's like a 1962 mic or something like that. It's just like so old school. It's like literally if you breathed on the thing, I think it'd probably fall apart, but it still works after all these years as well. So it's really, really cool. But mate, let's talk about guitars. Obviously, you know, you're famous for all your guitars and all the gear that you use as well, and all the amps as well. So I know it's like choosing a favorite child, but what was your favorite guitar, and what pickups do you currently love using at the moment?
I think my favorite guitar is this guy over here. We just put a new neck on it. It's a Vigier. It's an Indus.
Nice.
It's just got this new dyed maple neck.
Yeah.
So big fan of this guy here. This was my touring guitar. I had one before it that got destroyed in an accident. We got in a bus accident in Poland.
Oh,
and
no.
All my stuff got wrecked, including my spine. But
wow, no way.
Yeah, no, I fractured 2 vertebrae. It wasn't a good time.
No.
But, yeah, I'll put this back over here.
Fully recovered now, though, right?
Yeah, mostly. We'll say mostly recovered. Yeah. You never really get fully recovered from that. But that's my second one, and we've done a lot of, some modifications to it. But the Vigiers are like my favorite. They're just like, if you ever can find one, because they're not super common. Wow, they make playing so easy, which makes it more enjoyable to me, because you're not fighting the ergonomics of the guitar, and like it's such a pleasure to play. I know immediately when I played one for the first time, not being biased at the time, I didn't have any deal with them. I was just like, wow, this is another level from what I'm used to. You know, I'm like an old school Ibanez guy, and they make cool stuff, but like it's totally outclassed by like the French stuff. So Patrice Vigier is a genius, and he's very particular about his brand, and maybe that's can hurt him sometimes, but I think more often than not, it's, you know, he is super crazy with quality control, and the stuff is amazing playing, amazing. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, but there's others behind me too. You can see, you know, some other stuff back there. There's some Jerichos. There's a Kiesel. You know, there's an LTD, I think, back there. I'm pointing them backwards.
Black one.
Aristides back there. I mean, that's a really great guitar too. That crazy green one. It's, you know, not a piece of wood in that guitar. It's all like, I think like some kind of a called Arium or something, some kind of weird fill that they use, composite or something. And it's a cool guitar though. It's very unique. So those are great too.
Amazing, man. I've told this story to a couple of guests before, and actually I've got it behind me. This guitar, bearing in mind it is an Epiphone. I've got Gibson knocking around somewhere as well, but it is an Epiphone, and it's like top of the line Epiphone Les Paul Custom Pro. Guess how much it cost me?
Do I want to guess low or high?
No, super low.
$200 US.
No. Okay, so I don't know what it is in dollars, but in pounds, must be like $100.
Wow.
65. Basically, the neck on the guitar, it's brand new, but the neck on the guitar, it literally snapped. So the guy, it literally like professionally fixed it. Brand new guitar. Yeah. I think it snapped in transit. Plays absolutely fine, and it came with a hard case as well. So basically, so I was like, hold on. So I'm like, the hard case is probably worth about £60, like $100. I'm like, I got a free guitar. Like, it must be like an $800 guitar for free.
Yeah, I have a similar one. It's the same thing. I have I let one of my other engineers borrow it, but it's the same guitar. It's an Epiphone Les Paul. And I guess a long time ago, I had a crappy like guitar stand in the rehearsal room. and they put it on it, and either the stand gave out or they put it on it incorrectly, and the weight let the guitar fall forward, and it fell right on the headstock, and those headstocks are pretty weak. And it snapped right off, and they just left the guitar broken in the room and left a note on the floor that said, "Get new guitar stands." I'm actually working on a record with those guys still. Like, I've done like 4 records with them, but
brilliant.
So they left me the guitar. I had it fixed. We re-glued the neck, and it plays amazing. Like, it still plays amazing, and it's just, those guitars are great, man. Like, you don't have to spend a ton of money on to get a good playing guitar. You know, that's not necessarily the case.
Absolutely right. Yeah, too right. You know, it's like how the guitar's set up, and you know, kind of. Yeah, absolutely. It's so cool. Thanks so much for that, man. Amps. Let's talk amps. I know that you've got a crazy collection of amps over there.
I could probably rotate the camera.
Yeah, do it, man. Yeah, that's cool.
See if it'll work. It's not gonna get caught up, but there's some of them.
Yeah, I can see the Friedman.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch more down there and stuff, but I can't really position the camera better.
Any go-tos for you? So what's like the first amp that you might, first couple of amps that you might go for when you're doing a session?
Yeah, I mean, it always varies. We actually usually, when we get someone in here, like we did, guitars reamping for an album yesterday, and for the last 2 days, and we usually fire everything up, the whole wall of, 12, 13, 14 amps or whatever. And we just have the system. It's an Ampete system. It's an incredible system that's remote switchable and everything. And you can turn all the amps on and just hit a button and go between them or A/B them and add combinations of things. It's really wild. And we just go through every amp, and you could do it instantly between amps. So you can actually hear the difference. It's not just like, you turn one on, you play it riff, and you turn it on standby, and then you fire the other one up and connect all the cables, and then by then you've forgotten what it actually sounded like. You've lost all the nuance. So this system is incredible for like tone searching. So we'll fire everything up and go through them, and I have my own bias for my own playing style, but I try not to impose it too much on the artist when they're picking, and I kind of let them decide what they want for their sound, because far be it for me to tell them what their sound should be. They should identify with something that they like. And, we have a lot of Marshall flavors here. So not everything, but there's a lot of stuff that has that vibe. Yep. But for me, my favorite is just the Double J, the Friedman, the Jerry Cantrell amp. For heavy stuff, it's just like Dave Friedman just killed it. He just nailed it, man. He knows what he's doing. And I have a lot of Friedman stuff because, I'm friends with him, and I really, really like how he makes things sound. But, everything on this wall is incredible. Like, I don't have junk. I've gone through so many amps that if it doesn't get used or if people aren't feeling it, I just get rid of it. Like, there's no reason to keep something that's not being used every day on the wall here. So if it's on this wall and you've seen it, it's worth buying for sure.
Amazing. Any particular cabs that you love as well with all the heads?
Yeah, my go-to is a Friedman 412 that we have mic'd up in our ISO room always with 57s on it. And then we also have, the Mesa 412s I have a custom one that I put in 2 greenbacks into it. So it has V30s and greenbacks and an X pattern. So I like 412s for rock and metal just because, 1, they sound better than everything else, but 2, because you can put different speakers in them and you have so much more versatility. So a real big challenge when you do this every day of your life is not making the same sound over and over and over again. So if you can get cabs or multiple, I have 15 cabs or something in this place for all different. No cab is the same. So that you don't make the same sound all the time, because that gets real boring. It's good to have your go-tos and okay, I know I can get this sounding really good within 15, 20 minutes or even quicker. But if you just give everybody the same sound all the time, it's going to get a little redundant, and it's not exciting for you as a producer because
absolutely,
there's nothing new. It's like you're just repeating the same process over and over. So, but my go-to cab is the Friedman for sure, because it has the greenbacks on the top and the V30s on the bottom. So you can get a lot out of it. And then that other Mesa is really good too. I have an orange that we use a lot. I have a Splawn that's got some eminence in there that's very different sounding. It's very dark compared to everything else. But sometimes you want something contrasting with something bright, you know. So
Amazing.
yeah, I mean, I love all of it, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So cool. So I know that on tour you were using a fractal as well, if that's right.
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been into the amp modeling stuff like since its inception, essentially, and I've seen it grow. And it is great for a lot of things. Like it has its niche that's like super specific and is great for that. But for what I do for a job, like I would never want to do that. Yeah, even for live, I'd rather go with the 2 amp. But there is a lot of cool stuff to take from the modeling world for like ease of use and repeatability. There's some strengths there for sure.
Amazing. Thanks so much for that, man. As well, tell us about plugins. I know that you probably got a million like everyone else, but any particular plugins that are go-tos for you at the minute, third party wise?
Sure. Yeah. I have a million plugins because I work with a lot of companies and they just send me a ton of stuff. But if I showed you one of my mixes, there's not that many plugins on there. I mostly just try, like I said, balance it and get it sounding exactly how I want on the way in. And so that when I mix, I'm really only adding plugins that are like utility or like added an effect. So plugins that I love that I honestly at this point don't want to mix without. It probably let's see, let me just pull it up here.
Go for it, man.
Where is this guy? I don't have it on here. I think it's the Sonox drum gate.
Oh yeah, Sonox. Yeah, great company.
Yeah, that thing is kind of hard to understand at first because it's very, very advanced gate. But that thing is incredible. Like I used to have to edit my toms, all the noise out, all the cymbal noise and the bleed. I don't do that anymore. That used to take hours on like a 10 song, 12 song record, and prog stuff or tech metal stuff. Some of the songs are like 12 minutes long.
No way.
That eats up so much time. And now with this plugin, I don't have to worry about it. Other gates are good, and there's intelligent gates that work, but none that I know of that are as good as that, or in depth. For sure.
Sonics are amazing. Absolutely. I love, I'm sure you played around with it as well, but the Oak Sound Soothe as well.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've checked that out as well. Such a great plugin. But as well, Baby Audio, you probably noticed this. They've done a similar one, which is a lot cheaper than the Oak Sound Soothe, but it's not too far off. But it does work really, really well. But I love the Fab Filter stuff like everyone else. And Sound Toys as well, if I get any mixes through. So the Sound Toy stuff is like great fun. Really into that as well. Pedals though, man. I've got to talk to you about pedals. Obviously a guitarist loves his pedals. So is there any particular pedals that stands out for you at the minute?
Stands out for me. Yeah, sure. I'll just do a shameless plug. I mean, you can't buy this anymore, but this is my pedal with my face on it.
Nice.
This is an abominable, you can see right here. This is their a special edition of the Demon Lung, which if you're into fuzz pedals, it's the most crushing fuzz pedal I've ever seen, and I have a ton of them. I don't think you can see it in the camera, but I have an entire wall of pedals back there.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah,
That's
it's like
cool.
there's like I don't know, a ton.
Yeah.
So we do like pedals here. They add another layer of uniqueness to a record that, it's hard to get any other way. So just grabbing something off the wall, putting it in a chain, making something really unique. That's I'm a big fan of fuzzes and octave pedals and whammy pedals for heavy music, stuff like that. Like stuff that you don't hear it maybe when it's mixed in there, but you definitely notice it. Like if I were to mute it, you'd be like, oh shit, that thing I love is gone. So
amazing, man.
Most of the delays and reverbs I'll do in the box just because it's easier to lock them to a tempo. But unless you want a specific sound like a shoegaze or something like that you want to hit the preamp section of an amp with, like a delay or something, or reverb, then we'll do that on the way in for sure.
That's so cool. Thanks so much for that, Kevin. So Kevin, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. So before you go, and obviously you know you've got a crazy amount of projects that you're doing, but what's next on your journey? What's next for you over the next few months?
Few months is just mixing, mixing, recording bands. Our schedule is full every day. So I've got to wrap up a bunch of projects that I'm really excited about. And then I've got to start some and finish some that are in the process of being tracked and stuff like that. So just super busy here with doing that stuff and trying to get some free time to not do this stuff. But no, it is a lot of fun. And yeah, we're just super grateful that, you know, we're busy as we are. It's a blessing and a curse, like I told you earlier, because like I have people that like message me and they don't know, and they just like, hey, we want to come in like next week. What do you got open? And I'm like, how about next year? We start looking at some dates. So, I mean, that's the sad reality kind of. I mean, it's great, but at the same time, like I can't work with everybody that I want to work with. So we have to really fight the schedule to get all the time. And because I only have one spot, you know, and like I have to do what I can do with the time. And we really do work the hours, like in morning all the way to the night, different sessions, doing video stuff. We do streaming. We do shows sometimes. You know, lately, obviously, we haven't done shows, but like we do shows here, showcases. There's so much going. We have a tech shop here that we work on guitars and stuff too. I just got so tired of like taking bands' guitars in the sessions and fixing them because they don't know how to do that, and I just charge them and we just fix it in a different room.
No way.
Yeah, so I mean, we do a little everything here, but we're staying busy for sure.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for that, man. So before you go as well, so any advice? Obviously, you started off from scratch. You know, you only had a little bit of gear 15 years ago when you started off your studio. So any advice for anyone starting off, like building their own studio? Would you say maybe start off at home to start off with? Is that probably the way forward? Or just go out and get your own space and give it a go, you know?
No, I did actually make on my channel, on my YouTube channel, a video about like starting your own studio. I would never recommend anybody doing that unless they have a business plan set forth and they're ready to pay all the bills and the expenses that they're most definitely not aware of, that you have to, you know, figure out, like garbage retrieval. Like that's something you have to pay monthly that's going to cut into your overhead. Like there's so many things. There's like a laundry list of things that you would be, as owning your own place, that you'd have to be responsible for, that like you don't think about when you're like, I want to make a studio, you know, like I want to start a business. Like that's amazing. Everyone should do that. It's a great job, but like there's a lot of rough realities that you have to come and you know, that you're not aware of, that kills most businesses, honestly. So I would say if you're going to get into production, do whatever you can to make money, or like not make money at first. Honestly, you're not going to make any money at first. Just do shit for free and just get good at it. Hone your craft, because you're probably not very good in the beginning. I was horrible. And it's just rinse and repeat, man. Like I said, the amount of songs I've touched, it must be in like the 10,000s or something. It's so many, but I wasn't good for a long time, you know, and if it's just learning what you are strong at and improving in the areas that you're weak at, and like finding out, talking to other people and seeing what they do. And, you know, it's a long journey. So try to, if you have to do it as cheap as you can in the beginning until you really do get good and good enough to get paid. And then if you want to take that into the next level and get your own spot or make your own studio, then that's maybe the time to address that. But I've seen so many people, man, like just not be able to do it. And just because, like I said before, if you can kill all the technical stuff and you're like a whiz with all the stuff, I mean, you've got to like understand the in and outs of computers. Like I've been building computers since I was like 10. So like you have to know how to do this stuff. You can't just be like, oh, I browse the web. It's like, you're not going to cut it, man. You're going to come into so many problems with tech that you're going to fight, and you're not going to know how to solve. So there's so many things you have to do well in this job. It's not just like hitting record and telling a band to do it again. Like that's maybe 1% of my job.
Absolutely. As well, like kind of finding clients to start off with if you're starting off a new business, building a website, you know, kind of social media stuff, and you know, that's a full-time job in itself, though, isn't it? It's
tough, man. It really is. Like it's a real uphill battle, and like don't expect to like start and within a year like be doing national releases or anything like worthy. Like you're going to be doing local stuff for a long time until like locally you're sought as like a good commodity that people can rely on and trust, because like most engineers, I hear these horror stories. I've been doing this for far too long, but like I always ask a band that I've worked with for the first time, like, how'd you hear about me? What was the last place you were at? Where'd you do your last stuff? And I just like to hear what's going on in my local network here. And the horror stories that these people have, it's crazy that the stuff that they put up with, you know, like you never know when you go to a studio, like what you're going to get, you know, like I said, like I'm like a local commodity around here that like people know. They know the name, they come here, they get what they want, and they have a good time, and that's why they come back. But like the first time you go somewhere, you don't know the guy or girl maybe. Oh man, you don't know what you're getting into. No. So it's a real big like risk on the musician's side, because they've been potentially working on these songs for a year or two, or you don't know. And it's like it's their personal baby, you know, and they have to bring it to someone they trust. And you know, sometimes they don't get that luxury. They just go to whoever's local, and it could be rough.
Absolutely. It's affordability for a lot of people as well, though, isn't it? You know, it's cost, I think, as well. You know, it's such an important factor. But I always say to my clients when I'm doing mastering, I always say, look, you know, they say, can we listen to some of your work? Yeah, here's some of my portfolio. But I'm like, look, you know, let me just master a minute of one of your songs so you can hear what I do, you know, for free. And then if you like it, great. If you don't, great. You know, it's just giving those people, you know, a good service. But man, it's just, I think, you know, like you said, that it's like, you know, they've been working on their baby for so long, their songs, and they want like the best, you know, at the end of the day, we're a service industry, aren't we? So it's giving those artists the best service that we can to make sure that, you know, their music translates ready for their audience. And if you can give them a friendly service and give them a good time, like you said as well, in the meantime, that's what it's all about, you know. It's great.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're trying to run your place off of like one shot, like one and done customers that you'll never see again, you're not going to survive. No. You're not going it. You're not going to make it. You need to rely on repeat business, because that's the only way you're going to pay your bills. So you got to make sure when that person leaves that door that they're stoked. If they are not stoked, you're done. Like you have to think about it like that. You have to do everything in your power to make sure that they're happy. Because you want them to come back. You don't want them to go try another studio, because then they're going to maybe continue going to that other place down the road or whatever, and then you've lost them. And you know, so it's just turning around a good product. Like I said to you earlier, like getting the product, a good decent product, into someone's hands at the end of the day is a very small portion of it. There's so much more involved in the whole aspect of doing a record with a group or whatever, an artist, that's more important, honestly. So
absolutely.
But we do have a session coming in a few minutes.
No worries, man. Absolutely. I'll leave you to it then. But Kevin, feel free to hang out just for a minute after we finished the live as well. But I really do appreciate your time today. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you and finding out about your journey as well. Thanks, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cool.
But as well, I know that you probably booked up for about a year, but what's your website? Where do people go to?
Yeah, it's just backroom.studio. And I mean, you can shoot me an email or a DM or whatever, and we'll figure something out. But thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks for everyone that's joined today as well. I know it's quite late for everyone in the UK, but it's been so nice to go live to our friends in the States as well on Produce, Mix, Fix, and Conquer. But Kevin, enjoy your next session, man. So thanks so much for joining today. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one, man.